I'm Lauren Whitmore, and the moment my family decided I was their personal credit line happened over turkey and lukewarm wine. It was supposed to be a quiet dinner, late Thanksgiving, snow piling against the windows. The house smelled like sage and burnt butter. Plates clinked. Someone laughed too loud at nothing. My mother had already poured the second round before the first toast was even finished. Then Evan stood up, not rushed, not angry, calm, like he'd practiced it. "I'm overwhelmed," he said, pressing his palm to his chest like he was delivering bad medical news. "I really am." Forks paused midair. "I need a reset," he continued, "and I need you to cover it." I looked up at him. He didn't look at me. "A trip," he added. "Maldives. Just for a couple weeks. I can't think straight anymore." The word cover hung in the air. Heavy. Sticky. My father didn't even look surprised. He smirked, took a slow sip of wine, set the glass down like punctuation. "If she says no," he said, nodding in my direction, "then don't bother coming back here." No raised voice, no anger, just a statement. A rule. The room went silent in that way that only happens when everyone knows exactly who's about to be sacrificed. My mother didn't say a word. She adjusted the napkin on her lap. Once. Twice. Then gave the smallest nod. That nod was louder than anything Evan said. My fingers tightened around my glass. I felt the stem dig into my skin, cold, slippery. I realized I was smiling. That was the first thing that scared me. I set the glass down carefully. Too carefully. "No," I said. One syllable. Clean, sharp. Evan laughed, a short, breathy laugh. "Come on." Dad leaned back in his chair. "Don't be dramatic." Mom finally spoke. "Lauren, why do you always have to make things difficult?" Something in my chest shifted. Not broke. Shifted, like a bone sliding back into place after years out of alignment. I stood up, didn't grab my coat, didn't look at anyone. "Good luck," I said. "All of you." Then I walked out. Before I go any further, if you've ever had family treat you like you don't matter unless you're useful, if you've ever been the one who pays fixes covers and swallows it just to keep the peace, go ahead and hit like. Subscribe if you're listening, because what happened after I shut that door didn't just change my family. It ended it. The cold hit me like a slap. Wisconsin winter doesn't ease you into anything. It just takes. My breath ripped out of my lungs. Snow stung my face. The porch light buzzed behind me like it was annoyed I existed. I stood there for a second longer than necessary, waiting for guilt, for panic, for the familiar clawing in my stomach. Nothing came. That was the second something in me snapped. I walked to my car. The door handle burned my palm. Inside, the dashboard clock blinked 7:18 p.m. I sat there, hands on the wheel, staring at nothing, while the house glowed warm behind me. Yellow light. Laughter already creeping back in, like I'd never been there. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Don't do this." I didn't reply. Another buzz. "Evan, you're embarrassing me." Another from Dad. "Fix this." I put the phone face down in the cup holder. The click sounded final, like a lock sliding into place. As I drove away, the radio stayed off. Snow blurred the streetlights into long white streaks. My shoulders dropped. I hadn't realized how high they'd been for years. That night wasn't the beginning. It was the reveal, because none of that came out of nowhere. They didn't wake up one morning and decide I'd fund a fantasy vacation. They'd been training me for it, quietly, patiently, for years. Every emergency had my name on it. Every just this once somehow came back with interest. Evan wrecked his car, I helped. New job, new image, new start. Credit card maxed out, I covered it. Temporarily, always temporarily. Rent short, I wired it, no questions. Because family. Every time I hesitated, my mother would call late, whispering, like she didn't want the walls to hear. "Your father's blood pressure is high. He's so disappointed. Why can't you just help your brother?" "You're doing fine." Fine. That word did a lot of work in our family. Fine meant I didn't get to say no. Fine meant I was the solution, not a person. Back at the house, I knew exactly what was happening after I left. My father would sigh and shake his head like I'd failed a test. My mother would dab at her eyes and say, "I don't know what happened to her." Evan would lean into the story, the exhausted one, the misunderstood one. "She's changed," he'd say. "Money really messes with people." They'd agree, because that version required nothing from them. By the time I pulled into my garage, my hands were steady. That surprised me. The garage light flicked on. The concrete echoed. My breath fogged the windshield. I didn't move right away. Another text buzzed. "Mom again. You're breaking this family." I stared at the words, then laughed. Once, quiet, sharp, because the truth was simpler than anything they'd ever said. The family wasn't breaking. It was losing its crutch. Inside the house, someone would eventually load the dishwasher, plates sliding in, silverware clattering, the sound of normalcy reassembling without me. I sat there long enough for the engine heat to fade. Then I picked up my phone. Not to call anyone, just to look. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was about to be punished for what I was about to do. I felt clear. Later, my mother would leave one final voicemail. I listened to it days afterward. Her voice was tight, controlled, dangerous. "You've always thought you were better than us," she said. "I hope you're proud of yourself. Because don't expect us to be here when you come crawling back." That was the last thing she ever said to me without knowing what it would cost them. And at the time, standing alone in a dark garage with snow melting into the floor, I still didn't know either. I just knew one thing. I wasn't going back inside. I didn't become the family wallet overnight. No one ever does. It happens quietly, in installments, in moments that don't look abusive when you zoom in, but ruin you when you zoom out. The first time I paid for Evan, it felt reasonable. He was 24, newly fired, car wrapped around a guardrail at 2 a.m. He called me from the shoulder of the highway, voice shaking, breath loud in my ear. "I messed up," he said. "I really messed up." I remember sitting up in bed, laptop balanced on my knees, already pulling up my banking app before he even finished the sentence. That should have been my warning. I bought him another car. Not new, not fancy, reliable. Something to get him back on his feet. My mother cried when I told her. "She really does love you," she said to Evan, loud enough for me to hear through the phone. I told myself it was a one-time thing. It never is. After that came the add-ons. Insurance, just until he gets settled. Then gas money. Then a credit card payment he forgot about. Then another. Then the late fee on top of the late fee. Every transaction came with a story. Every story came with urgency. I didn't realize how trained I was until the first time I tried to say no. It was a Tuesday. I remember because my dishwasher was running and the sound was drilling into my skull. Evan wanted help with rent. Again. "I can't this time," I said. "I need to slow down." There was a pause. Then my mother's voice cut in, already crying. "Lauren, your father's chest hurts," she whispered. "He's under so much stress. This isn't the time." I sent the money before she finished the sentence. That was the night I understood the rules. Evan didn't need to convince me. My parents did it for him. They built a narrative where my money wasn't help. It was obligation. Where my success meant I owed them for not falling apart faster. Every family gathering turned into a status update. "How's work?" Dad would ask. Before I could answer, Mom would smile. "She's doing very well." Very well meant I could be asked for more. Evan started living like someone who knew a net would always appear beneath him. He moved into a nicer apartment than I had. Downtown, exposed brick, a view. He sent pictures like proof of progress. Trying to manifest abundance, he texted once with a champagne emoji. I paid the security deposit that afternoon. When the lease renewal came with a jump he couldn't afford, my father didn't even call me. He just texted my bank routing number to Evan. I didn't correct it. That silence was my second mistake. By year 2, Evan stopped pretending the money was temporary. He talked in plans, brands, launches. Once this takes off. He bought things that photographed well and lasted a week. Sneakers worn once, chairs meant for streaming setups that never streamed, storage units full of unopened boxes because he didn't want clutter in the aesthetic. I paid for the storage unit. I paid for the phone plan too. Unlimited. Family package. His friends used it more than he did. Every time I tried to draw a line, my mother redrew it softer. "You don't want to be the reason he fails. Your brother looks up to you. Families support each other." She never asked how I was doing. She didn't have to. I was fine. Fine meant exhausted but functional. Fine meant I didn't complain when my savings stopped growing. Fine meant I canceled my own plans without thinking. I remember the night I realized I hadn't bought myself anything non-essential in almost 2 years. I was standing in a grocery store staring at a $12 bottle of olive oil, calculating whether it was irresponsible. That same week, Evan wired himself $5,000 to clear his head in Vegas. I paid the overdraft fees so his card wouldn't lock him out. I told myself it was easier to pay than to fight. That lie kept me compliant longer than guilt ever could. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the expectation. By the time Evan brought up the Maldives trip glossy brochure ocean so blue it looked fake he didn't ask, he assumed. "We'll need the deposit fast," he said. "They're almost booked." I stared at the photos. Infinity pools, private chefs. A lifestyle no one in my family had ever lived, but somehow felt entitled to perform. "I'll pay you back," he added casually. "Once the brand launches, triple, easy." I believed him for about 6 seconds. Then my mother put her hand over mine. "He just needs one win," she said softly. "Don't you want that for him?" That was the moment something inside me went quiet. Not angry, not sad, empty. I paid the deposit and immediately felt like I'd lost something I wouldn't get back. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, my name wasn't Lauren anymore. It was, Can you just spot him until next month? Can you just handle this one thing? Can you just be flexible?" Flexible became code for silent. The night Evan demanded I pay for another trip, bigger, louder, more expensive, he wasn't crossing a line. He was standing exactly where I'd trained him to stand. What he didn't expect was that I'd finally stepped out of position. That's what shocked them. Not the no, the fact that it stuck. Because when I walked out into that freezing night, I didn't feel like I was abandoning anyone. I felt like I was returning something that was never supposed to be mine. And for the first time since the first transfer, the first late-night guilt call, I didn't reach for my phone. I reached for air and breathed. I didn't cry that night. That surprised me more than anything. I pulled into my garage, shut the door, and sat there while the engine ticked itself quiet. The light overhead flickered once before settling. Concrete walls, oil stains, silence thick enough to feel like pressure. My phone buzzed again. I didn't check it. Instead, I took a breath and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Control. I went inside, kicked off my boots, and set my keys on the counter. The apartment was dark except for the glow of the city leaking in through the windows. I didn't turn on the lights right away. I let my eyes adjust, let my pulse slow. Then I opened my laptop. The screen came to life with a soft click. Bright, clean, impersonal. I logged into my bank. No hesitation, no second guessing. Just muscle memory finally pointed in a different direction. The first thing I canceled was Evan's car insurance. I stared at the policy number for a second before hitting confirm. It disappeared instantly. No warning. No drama, just gone. That was the third thing in me that snapped. Next was the phone plan. Unlimited family plan. 4 lines, 2 of which I didn't even recognize anymore. His friends, girls he was trying to impress, people who didn't know my name but lived off it. Delete. The storage unit came next. 10 by 10, climate controlled, monthly auto pay, canceled. The gym membership, private, expensive, the one he swore was networking, gone. Streaming services, music subscriptions, cloud storage. The digital leeches I'd stopped noticing because they'd become background noise in my life. Each click was quiet, final, clean. No fireworks, no swelling music, just the dull sound of keys under my fingers and the hum of the refrigerator behind me. I waited for the panic. It always came before. That familiar rush, the what-if spiral, the mental math of consequences, the rehearsed apologies. Nothing happened. My breathing stayed even. I canceled the last recurring charge and closed the laptop. The clock on the microwave read 9:42 p.m. I poured myself a glass of water, drank it slowly. My hands didn't shake. That was when I understood this wasn't an outburst. It was a decision. I slept through the night. No dreams, no jolting awake to check my phone. Just deep, heavy sleep, like my body had been waiting for permission to shut down. The next morning I woke up before my alarm. Sunlight cut across the kitchen floor in sharp lines. Snow fell outside, thick and silent. The world looked untouched, innocent, like nothing had happened. My phone was still face down where I'd left it. I flipped it over. No notifications. That was new. I made coffee, black, no rush. Sat at the table and watched the steam rise like it was the only thing that mattered. Then the email came in. Subject line reservation update. I didn't open it right away. I knew. I opened it anyway. The words were polite, corporate, smiling. Due to non-payment of the remaining balance, your reservation has been canceled. The deposit is non-refundable. I stared at the screen, read it twice, then once more. Nothing twisted in my stomach, no urge to call, no instinct to fix it, no reflexive shame. Just stillness. That scared me a little. I closed the email and archived it. The rest of the day passed quietly. Too quietly. Like the moment after a storm when the air feels wrong. No calls, no texts, no sudden emergencies. I went to work, sat through meetings, answered emails, took notes. My colleagues had no idea something massive had shifted. By the time I got home, it had been almost 24 hours. That's when the first crack came. My phone lit up on the counter. Evan's name. I let it ring. It stopped. Immediately started again. I didn't move. By the time I finished dinner, there were 12 missed calls. A voicemail notification blinked. I didn't listen. I showered instead. Let the water pound my shoulders. Let the noise fill the space where guilt used to live. When I got out, my phone was vibrating like it was angry at me. Texts stacked on top of each other. What did you do? Call me right now. Lauren, this isn't funny. Then my mother. Why are you doing this? I watched the screen light up and go dark, over and over, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine anymore. I didn't answer. That was the moment I realized something important. They didn't miss me. They missed access. Around midnight, my father texted, "You've gone too far." I read it once, then I turned my phone off. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was spacious. I sat on the couch, lights off, city glowing through the windows, snow still falling. The world moving on without waiting for my response. I thought about all the times I'd rushed to fix things before anyone even asked. All the nights I'd stared at my phone, heart racing, waiting for the next crisis. All the apologies I'd given for boundaries I didn't even get to keep. And I felt something close to relief. The next morning, the fallout began in earnest. Voicemails, missed calls, emails, a flood that would have drowned me before. I let it happen without me. One voicemail slipped through before I powered the phone back down. Evan's voice, tight, furious. "You humiliated me," he said. "Do you have any idea what you did?" I smiled. Just a little, because I knew exactly what I'd done. I'd stopped playing my role. That's all it takes to break a system built on one person carrying the weight. I didn't yell, I didn't threaten, I didn't explain. I clicked cancel. And the structure they'd balanced on for years started to lean, quietly, irreversibly. They would call it cruelty. They would call it betrayal. They would tell anyone who listened that money had changed me. They were wrong. Money didn't change me. Clarity did. And once I had it, there was no going back. I didn't push anything over. That part matters. All I did was step back. The collapse started without me, like rot finally exposed to air. 3 days after I turned my phone back on, I was walking out of a coffee shop downtown when Evan's name lit up the screen again. I declined it without slowing down. It rang again immediately, then again. By the time I reached my car, there were 27 missed calls. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I didn't need to. The first real crack came that night through my sister. Mila hadn't called me directly in years. She preferred indirect fire Instagram stories, subtweets, vague captions about fake people and snakes. So when her name popped up as a new DM request, I knew something had gone very wrong. She didn't bother easing into it. "What the hell did you do?" I read it once. Let the typing bubble appear, disappear. Then another message. The resort emailed Evan. "Everything's gone. People are laughing." I locked my phone and set it face down on the counter. That was the sound of the shield being removed. The next morning, my mother FaceTimed me at exactly 8:03 a.m. I recognized the pattern. She always chose times when she knew I'd be alone. I didn't answer the first call, or the second. On the third, I did only because the vibration was rattling my mug across the desk. Her face filled the screen already wet, mascara streaked, hair pulled back too tight. "Lauren," she said like it hurt to say my name. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I said nothing. "Evan told everyone about the trip," she continued. "Everyone. His friends, his co-workers. He was counting on this. Still nothing. Now the resort sent a cancellation notice." She whispered, voice cracking. "Do you know how humiliating that is?" She waited for me to fix it. "I didn't." Her tone sharpened. "Your father hasn't come out of his office all morning. His blood pressure." "We're done," I said. She froze. "What, I'm not doing this anymore." Then I ended the call. I blocked her number before my hands could shake. That afternoon, the family group chat detonated. Evan posted a screenshot of the cancellation email. Subject line visible. Dates, amounts, everything. "Guess who ruined my life," he wrote. "Thanks, big sis." Reactions poured in. Shock emojis. Laughing emojis. The wrong kind of sympathy. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years chimed in with words like family first and heartless. Aunts added Bible verses. Mila dropped skull emojis like punctuation. I left the chat. They added me back. I left again. By nightfall, I'd blocked 7 numbers. That's when the car disappeared. Mila sent the video like it was content. It was late. The parking lot lights cast everything in sickly orange. Snow blowing sideways. Evan barefoot in pajama pants, screaming at 2 men in reflective jackets as they chained his BMW to a flatbed. "That's my car," he yelled, voice cracking. "You can't just take it." One of the men held up a clipboard and kept working. Evan charged forward, slipped on ice, and went down hard. The sound echoed. Hollow. Final. The truck pulled away while he was still on the ground, fists pounding snow, mouth open in a sound I couldn't hear. Mila captioned it. "This is cinema." I watched it once, then deleted the message. The repo hit his credit immediately. That mattered more than the car, because my mother had co-signed the loan years ago, back when it was just for 6 months. 6 months turned into years. Their scores dropped overnight. They tried to pivot fast. That's when my father finally acted. He applied for a home equity line of credit, cash-out refinance. The house had been paid off since he retired. He used to brag about it. The bank didn't care. The denial email was short. Brutal. Application declined due to recent derogatory account activity. Mila sent screenshots like play-by-play commentary. Papers spread across the dining table, highlighter marks. My father's hand visible in one photo shaking as he signed something he didn't understand anymore. I didn't respond. By late February, the house appeared on Zillow. I wasn't looking for it. I found it by accident running comps for a client. Same red brick, same cracked driveway, same address I'd memorized as a kid. The listing photos were merciless. Unopened bills piled on the counter. Carpet stained dark in places no one wanted to explain. The garage half-open snow drifted inside like it already belonged to someone else. The price dropped 4 times in 2 weeks. Then the status changed. Foreclosure. Auction scheduled. Mila went live the same day. She was at a ski resort 3 hours north, cheeks flushed, wearing a white jacket she definitely hadn't paid for. Chairlifts swung behind her against a perfect blue sky. "Quick update," she said brightly. "Some people thought they could destroy our family by being selfish. But look at me." She blew a kiss. Tagged Evan. Tagged me. Living my best life. The comments were split at first. Then they turned. People asked questions, real ones. Why didn't Evan have a job? Why were they vacationing while losing their house? Why did family always mean one person paying? Mila kept smiling. The smile cracked anyway. By April, the auction hammer fell. An investor bought the house for cash, less than half of what it used to be worth. They had 48 hours to leave. They loaded what they could into 2 rented trucks and checked into a cheap motel off the interstate. Weekly rates, cash only. 1 room, 4 adults, 2 beds. Evan picked up a job waiting tables overnight. Black shoes, grease stains, Name tag crooked. Mila tried to keep posting like nothing had changed. Ring light clipped to a cracked mirror. New chapter energy, she captioned it. No one bought it. Friends stopped answering. Invites dried up. The noise faded. That's the part no one talks about, the quiet after you've burned every bridge and there's no audience left to perform for. One night, Evan left a voicemail I did listen to. His voice was hoarse, smaller. They took everything he said. You could have stopped this. I deleted it because that was the lie holding everything together. I didn't take anything. I stopped giving. And without that, there was nothing left for them to stand on. The shield was gone. Gravity did the rest. I never raised my voice. I never explained myself. I didn't need to. When a system collapses, the moment one person steps away, the problem was never the person who left. It was the weight they'd been carrying alone. The letter arrived the following December. No return address. Just my old name, written carefully, like the pen had hesitated before every curve. The postmark was from a town I'd never had a reason to visit. I stood in my kitchen with my coat still on snow, melting off the hem, and pooling by the door, and held the envelope without opening it. It was heavier than it needed to be. Overfilled. Like whoever sent it was afraid silence wouldn't be enough. I already knew who it was from. I made tea first. That felt important. I let the kettle click off on its own, chose a mug I actually liked, sat down at the table instead of hovering like I used to when bad news came in. Only then did I slide my finger under the flap. 12 pages. Folded and refolded until the creases had turned white. My mother's handwriting filled most of them. Tight, slanted. The kind of writing that looks controlled until you notice how hard the pen was pressed into the paper. She wrote about hardship, about sacrifice, about how everything had spiraled so fast she couldn't catch her breath. She wrote about the trailer they were living in now. 1 bedroom, no heat in the bathroom, propane tank that ran out every 10 days. She wrote about my father standing 8 hours a day at the entrance of a big box store, smiling at strangers who used to invite them to barbecues. She wrote about Evan losing shifts, about money disappearing, about mistakes. She never wrote the word sorry. The last page was different. Different handwriting, looser, angrier. Mila, you did this. You broke Mom. You let Evan fall apart. You made me leave. Everything we lost is because you were too selfish to help when family needed you most. I hope every Christmas you spend alone tastes like ash. There was a faint dried tear stain blurring the word ash. I read the letter once, not twice. Not obsessively like I would have before. Once was enough. I didn't feel anger. That surprised me. I didn't feel guilt either. What I felt was distance, like reading about people I used to know. I carried the pages to the fireplace, lit the burner, held the corner of the stack to the flame. The paper curled in on itself, blackened. The last sentence disappeared first. I watched until nothing but ash remained, then rinsed it down the sink, turned the water off, stood there a moment longer than necessary. The apartment was quiet. Not the tense quiet I grew up with, not the waiting for something to go, wrong quiet. Just quiet. I cooked dinner that night. Steak. Medium rare. Opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for no real reason other than I'd always been waiting for someone else to justify it. I set the table for one. The heat hummed through the vents. Snow fell softly outside the windows, turning the city into something muted and clean. I ate slowly. No phone buzzing. No half-listening for footsteps. No calculating how much something would cost tomorrow. After dinner, I didn't clean right away. I sat back and let the room exist around me. This was the part no one had prepared me for. The peace. When you leave chaos, there's a moment where your body doesn't trust the quiet, where you keep bracing for impact that never comes. That night, I didn't brace. I slept deeply. No dreams, no jolts awake, just sleep. The following morning, I woke to sunlight spilling across the floor, made coffee, stood by the window and watched the city wake up. Somewhere my family was still explaining their story to anyone who would listen. Somewhere they were still convinced I'd ruined them. I let them have that. I had something better. I had a life that no longer required permission, a phone that stayed silent unless I wanted it to ring, money that belonged to me, not as leverage, not as obligation, not as apology. I didn't win. I didn't get revenge. I didn't watch anyone suffer and feel proud of it. I just stopped bleeding for people who refuse to stop cutting. That's the part they'll never understand. They think the moment I walked away was the moment everything fell apart. They're wrong. Everything fell apart because it was never standing on solid ground to begin with. I was just the thing holding it upright. And when I finally stepped aside, I didn't destroy anything. I let it be what it always was. That Christmas, I didn't go anywhere. I didn't need to. The apartment was warm, the table was full, the silence was kind, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was missing something. I felt like I'd come home.